gentlemen, welcome to the panel webinar for today. Our presenter, who is also a panelist, his name is Mr. Emezino Afiegbe. Zino leads the Gender Center of Excellence at EFINA and has been at the forefront of financial inclusion, digital financial services with over 23 years experience doing from the product business side and also the development space. Until joining EFINA, Zeno has focused, led different teams that created digital value exchange and gender focus, in gender focused sectors, leading global technology firms like Visa, more recently, Women's World Banking, where he led business development in Africa during that period between 2019 and 2024. Like I said, Zeno currently leads the Gender Center of Excellence. And this morning, we will begin today's conversation with Zeno walking us through an important presentation that we have titled Driving Growth Through Gender Diversity and Engagement with Women segment. Hello, Mr. Zeno. The floor is yours. Hi, Zeno. Please confirm you can hear us. Oh, great. Great. Please go on, sir.
Thank you so much for the fine introduction, Emmanuel. I will put my presentation on the presentation mode so that we can have a better view. Great. So once again, you are welcome to this very important discussion around how to close women's access to credit gap in Nigeria and the roles that multiple stakeholders have to play. And of course, this is EFINA in partnership with the Fintech Association of Nigeria. And we want all ecosystem stakeholders to have a clear view of what the opportunity is and the various actions that we can collaboratively take in order to advance women's access to productive credit and to close the gender gap, and then see what opportunity is available for us to harness, which ultimately will lead to the impact of women. At EFINA, Enhancing Financial Inclusion and Advancement, we focus on ensuring that we center our implementations, our research, our partnerships around the target segment. And of course, today we're looking at women as a high potential latent opportunity that of course will lead to overall GDP growth for our country. And of course, as our vision at EFINA, we are focused on ensuring that all Nigerians, including all women, have access to the right relevant financial services that will deliver impact in their lives and in the lives of their families and communities. But then the question arises, why should we even pay attention to the women's segment? What is unique about the segment that financial service providers and different stakeholders may not have paid attention to that would unlock immense value? Here are some numbers, and a number of these we are going to go through as we progress through the webinar that help us understand how much is being left on the table. In October last year, and this is a reference I love to point to, the governor of the central bank, during the event of the launch of the Wi-Fi code in Nigeria, actually highlighted that 294 billion naira represents the gap when it comes to access to productive credit for women micro entrepreneurs in Nigeria. And this is corroborated by McKinsey. When looking at sub-Saharan Africa, you can see here that $300 billion is the amount that will be added to the continent's GDP for sub-Saharan Africa. And the majority of that amount will be coming from Nigeria because of closing the women's access to credit gap in the country. Here are some other very useful statistics. You will see that according to our study back in 2023, 16% of adult women in Nigeria were able to access credit from formal financial service providers. Compared to men, you can see the gap. Men had 23% as those who accessed credit. And then this is worrisome because when you look at micro enterprises in Nigeria, women are driving almost half of these micro enterprises, which are responsible for a lot of our GDP and employment in the country. 41% of micro enterprises are being driven by women. However, the solely needed credit, only 8% of the loan book of formal financial service providers is made available to these women. Now, a lot of the credit that women micro entrepreneurs would access would be accessed through digital form factors. However, we have seen from a research by Gates Foundation that 9% of Nigerian women are just the proportion that leverage digital to access loans. Once again, there is a disparity in comparison to men, 15%. Closely related to the access to credit from formal financial service providers and leveraging the digital form factor is literacy. It's one thing to access credit, it's another thing to know how to utilize the credit optimally in order to get the business growth results and employment objectives of one's micro enterprise. And then again, to protect oneself from attacks. That's the consumer protection aspect. And this came out of the research from the Alliance for Financial Inclusion. Other reasons why this segment is very important. Did you know that the majority of Nigerian adults are women? There's a slight margin over men. From our Access to Financial Services survey back in 2024, we were able to, in collaboration with the National Bureau of Statistics, establish that we have 111 million adults, persons aged 18 years and above, and 51% are women. Another interesting factor of these 56.6 million women, adult women, is that the majority, 59%, are young women aged between 18 years and 35 years. Another interesting fact we established for this very important segment is that 84% of adult women have access to mobile phones, which helps us to start ideating and thinking about how can we leverage that form factor, that channel, to enable more women micro entrepreneurs to have access to productive credit in order to close the gap. Other factors established by practice is the fact that women are disciplined debtors. Once the information regarding the loan solution or product is made clear to them, they repay, and they repay a few times better than men. Also, they are excellent advocates. Once the solution works well for them, they spread the word within their constituency and within other professionals within their space, fellow persons within trading and agriculture, as the case may be. And they are a stable customer cluster where you have loyalty and longevity. And of course, when you have women empowered in this way, you see the formula we should bear in mind. Empowered women would result in resilient families and businesses, which would result in increased employment, which would result in optimally productive communities, and ultimately GDP growth. Remember that $300 billion figure from the McKinsey study of 2022? That would be achieved across the region, largely driven by Nigeria, if we engage women. So tremendous opportunity. And at EFINA, we always look at not the glass half empty situation, as you can see on the left, but glass half full. But having that optimism would also ensure that we do what we can to get the glass to its brim. Now, when you think about brim, think about it as an acronym that stands for B, being brand new business or blue ocean. Many of the financial service providers are realistically recycling the same customers, sharing the same wallet of individuals. So as a financial institution, if you're looking for brand new business, B, the blue ocean, is women micro entrepreneurs, and that focus will enable us close the gap. Then the R stands for achieving rich and reliable returns. What our research has confirmed, which we showed in one of the preceding slides, about the fact that women are better repayers. When you have a large proportion of your portfolio being women micro entrepreneurs, you are guaranteed reliable returns. And in addition to availing the credit product or solution, it's important to provide information to these women, that financial literacy piece we spoke about. When you do that, you have informed customers and ultimately positive domino effect that yields the right impact we need societally. And then the M is the market growth that will be achieved. So essentially, we need to leverage fintech in that regard. Now, this final slide basically shows the different stakeholders that need to collaborate to close the gap. So instead of seeing the gap as a problem or a challenge, we see it as a light bulb, as an opportunity that can be leveraged by all stakeholders. And who are they? I'm going to start clockwise, beginning with FSPs, financial service providers or participating financial institutions, which include microfinance banks and institutions, non-interest financial institutions, very important for the northern regions, commercial banks, and then MNOs when it comes to gathering alternative sources of data to evaluate eligibility for credit. Then, of course, the regulators are very important: Central Bank, Security and Exchange Commission, NICOM, and others. Communities within the localities where the women reside, extremely important. Community leaders, religious leaders, women group anchors, and very importantly, male champions who are going to open the door and help us bridge that gap related to patriarchal norms. DFIs as well, very important. Credit bureaus cannot be neglected, and what we put here is credit bureaus plus, because we're going to include here the National Collateral Registry, which has been in existence for several years, almost a decade or so. How can we leverage that? How can we make it work better for the financial services ecosystem? FMCGs, very important for low-income micro entrepreneurs because this is part of the stock they sell. Government agencies at the federal level, we have seen a lot of subnational domestication of women's economic empowerment policies across about 11 states and more to come. Then, of course, in getting all these entities together, we believe that we'll be able to collaboratively close the women's access to credit gap and then start to see the positive domino effect that will lead to increased GDP growth. A lot's going to be discussed by the panel, so I'm going to stop here and would love to engage further in seeing how we can all collaborate and be part of a success story that will lead us to the next frontier of inclusion. Thank you.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you so much, Emezino Afiegbe, Lead Gender Center of Excellence at EFINA. I think we have a good starter. With this, I know our panelists are having a lot to show to speak to. I also know that the audience has questions. Like I said earlier, please put your questions in the Q&A session and general comments in the comment section. I'm going to quickly introduce my moderator for today, who will then constitute the panel for the conversation, then introduce the session properly. Our moderator for today is no other person than Chisom Orakusi, who is the head legal and compliance at Carbon, the one that we used to know as Pay Later, for those of you who are wondering what Carbon is. So Chisom oversees regulatory strategy and ensures that robust compliance across Nigeria's leading fintech platform, Carbon, is achieved. She has deep expertise in financial services and fintech law. She has built a strong track record in navigating complex regulatory environments within Africa, especially in the credit space. She's recognized for her leadership in steering Carbon's legal framework, particularly in areas such as digital lending, like I said, consumer protection and anti-money laundering, ensuring that the company operates within integrity, the ambit of integrity, innovation, in a rapidly evolving market. She is also a member of the Fintech Association of Nigeria and also a domain leader within the Economic and Financial Inclusion Community of Practice of the FintechNGR. Hi, Chisom. Welcome to the webinar. The floor is yours.
Hi, Emmanuel. Cheers for the introduction. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar on closing women's access to credit gap through policy, innovation, and collaboration. As you're aware, this webinar is jointly hosted by EFINA and FintechNGR. So I'm just going to give you a brief and a bit of context about why we're having this particular why we have this particular topic or why we're focused on this particular topic. So like Emezino already mentioned, despite Nigerian women owning nearly 41% of micro businesses and playing a critical role in economic resilience, they continue to face significant barriers when it comes to accessing formal credit. So Emezino already showed us the recent data from EFINA's 2023 Access to Finance Survey, that only 16% of adult women in Nigeria have accessed formal credit compared to 23% of men. This gender credit gap, rooted in systemic constraints such as, lack of collateral, limited credit histories, gender bias policies, is undermining Nigeria's progress towards inclusive economic growth and financial equity, like we all saw from Emezino's presentation. So in this session, we're going to hear from an outstanding panel of public, private, and civil society leaders who bring policy, market, innovation, and grassroots perspectives to the table. Our discussion is going to be focused on three key objectives. One, illuminating the constraints that limit women's access to credit. Two, showcasing innovative policy tools. And three, innovative policy tools, business models, and technological enablers. And then three, catalyzing collaboration across stakeholders to unlock scalable, inclusive solutions. So whether you're a regulator, a financial service provider, development partner, or an entrepreneur, this conversation is definitely a chance to reflect, learn, and act together towards a more gender-inclusive credit ecosystem. So our expert panel today is going to explore the systemic and practical constraints limiting women's access to credit in Nigeria and showcase innovative business models, policy solutions, and technological enablers that can drive meaningful progress and identify measures that catalyze collaboration among credit providers, development institutions, policymakers, and women entrepreneurs to enable them unlock scalable solutions. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our wonderful panelists. First of all, I will introduce Dr. Nuruddin Zaro. Dr. Nuruddin Zaro is a technical advisor to the President of Nigeria on economic and financial inclusion in the Office of the Vice President. There, he leads national efforts to expand access to finance and drive inclusive economic growth. He also serves as Secretary of the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion and is currently spearheading Nigeria's Digital Public Infrastructure Initiative. Previously, he was a technical advisor at the CBN, where he shaped key financial inclusion and AFCFTA strategies. Dr. Zaro is the convener of the She's Included movement and has helped executive roles in financial management and cooperative governance. With nearly 2 decades of experience across public policy, finance, and academia, he is a fellow of the ACCA UK, FICA Nigeria, and ACA ICANN. He also holds a PhD in accounting. He's a respected author, speaker, and mentor, and is known for his leadership in development finance, gender inclusion, and digital innovation. Welcome, Dr. Zaro.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, EFINA. Good morning, FinTech. And of course, good morning, our dear audience across Nigeria and across the globe. Good morning, everyone.
Our next panelist, Inebogo Egbo. Inebogo Egbo is the Executive Director of the ECOWAS Small Business Coalition, ESBC, where she leads regional efforts to empower small and medium enterprises as drivers of inclusive economic growth and integration across West Africa. With a strong focus on gender equality, financial inclusion, and policy advocacy, she champions the interests of women-led and youth-driven businesses within the ECOWAS region. Under her leadership, ESBC engages governments, development partners, and private sector actors to shape SME-friendly policies, improve access to finance, and foster cross-border collaboration. Inebogo is a recognized voice in the MSME ecosystem, committed to building resilient and scalable enterprises that contribute to regional prosperity and sustainable development. Good morning, Inebogo, and welcome to today's seminar.
Morning, Chisom. Thank you. You pronounced my name so well.
I was hoping I did.
You did 100%. But please go ahead and just call me Ogo. Everyone does.
Okay. Oh, great.
So Ogo
Great.
is fine.
I
Thank
figured
you.
that would be the short form. Ogo.
Yes,
Okay,
yes,
great.
Ogo. So Olga is good, and thank you. I'm excited to be here today. When we talk about women, I'm very passionate because I'm one, and I see how the narratives always turns out. So we have to step up. So I'm very honored to be here today. And regarding ESBC, it actually stands for ECOWAS Small Business Coalition. And our leadership is actually run by Dr. Abdul Rashid Yerima. He's the regional president. So he foresees 12 ECOWAS member states. And I serve as executive director and head of the secretariat. Thank you.
Cheers, Ogo. Cheers. Thanks, and it's wonderful to have you here today. Our next panelist needs no further introduction, Mr. Emezino Afiegbe. He's already been introduced, and we've already seen some of the work he's been doing on this topic. So I'm going to introduce our next panelist, Mr. Michael Ogba. Michael is the Managing Director and CEO of Sitiamo Technologies Limited, a Nigerian micro-lending startup focused on expanding access to credit and financial services for underserved individuals and small businesses. Under his leadership, Sitiamo has pioneered inclusive lending solutions, leveraging alternative credit scoring, mobile technology, and digital identity to reach thin file and informal sector borrowers, particularly women and micro-entrepreneurs. With a strong background in fintech innovation, digital lending infrastructure, and market development, Michael is passionate about bringing Nigeria's credit access gap, about bridging Nigeria's credit access gap through technology-driven financial inclusion. He regularly collaborates with financial institutions, cooperatives, and regulators to advance responsible data-driven lending models. Michael, good morning. Good to have you here.
Yeah, good morning. I'm so delighted to be part of this. Thank you, everyone. I can't wait for us to start ideating and discussing everything we've agreed to discuss. I'm passionate about women. 96% of our customers are women. 96% of our staff are women. Management and board, we have over 80% of them as women in Sitiamo. It's intentional, and I'm looking forward to sharing more of the reasons why we have decided to make Sitiamo a woman-driven institution. Thank you very much.
Amazing. Thank you, Michael. Okay, so my first question will go to Dr. Zauro. Dr. Zauro, Nigeria's gender credit gap remains wide. I know we've already seen from the stats provided by Emezino that 16% of Nigerian women accessed formal credit in 2023 compared to 23% of men. These discrepancies are often driven by rigid requirements in relation to collateral, a lack of identity documentation, and unfortunately, discriminatory lending practices. My question is, from your role shaping national policy, what do you see as the most entrenched systemic barriers limiting women's access to credit in Nigeria?
All right, thank you so much once again, the moderator, and thanks a lot once again to EFINA, to FintechNGR, and our very interesting and respected viewers across the world. You see, this administration, of course, recognized the fact that there's a gender gap, there's a barrier, there's a gender gap, of course, in terms of access to formal financial services, of course, within this space. And that is why, this initiative that brought us to where we are right now, I think is initiated in order to to address some of these key challenges. So straight to your question, you're talking about barriers. The key barriers actually, not only here, but based on even the studies and all of that, is actually about, number one, has to do with, of course, their capacity to provide, the needed security, of course, that is needed for them to access formal financial services. That is called collateral, isn't it? And of course, that one could also be linked to the fact that there are so many other barriers, that come together and form this as a challenge. For example, when you look at the NFIS 02, you would realize that one of the key gaps identified is actually the regional gap, isn't it? Whereby we have Northwest and Northeast dominating the exclusion bracket, of course, in your survey, by EFINA. So the issue around it here is that we could also have some religious and some cultural issues that came together and of course form these barriers. What am I trying to say? In certain groups, in certain cultures, you realize that women, for example, are not, allowed to own certain kind of assets, or, for them to be able to have access in certain places, you would realize that they have to have permission maybe from their spouses or so. And at the same time, also, there are so many other cultural barriers. We have those ones from the north, we even have those ones from the south, from the east, and just across the entire country. So those barriers actually, contribute a lot, within the space of not allowing the women to have access to formal financials and, of course, services. Of course, the financial services providers, for them to be able to extend the funding, actually, definitely they have to have something to ring fence the credit that is actually going out there, for them to be sure of recovery. As you have introduced me earlier on, I have been in central bank, of course, all my career with little of academics, before coming to where I am right now. So one of the things the central bank is and has always been doing is in its multiple, initiatives, you realize that most times they make a provision for certain portion of this, their interventions to specific to women. I can give example, MSMEDF, macro, small and medium enterprise development fund. You can realize that in order to address that challenge, because they know that women have that kind of challenges, about 60% of that fund was actually earmarked for women, out of which the 40% is also inclusive of women. Unfortunately, notwithstanding that effort, in the process of delivery, you would realize that women are still at a disadvantaged position. So that is why we are here, on the assumption of this administration, this office was created, whereby the ASWA Accord was signed in April 2024, and again, leading to the formation of the PRECIFI, where I am heading the secretariat now. PRECIFI stands for Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion. So what happened in that is that when we diagnosed the whole issue, we've been engaging, and thanks to EFINA and, of course, all the stakeholders for serving as our technical team to review all these issues to see how we can make it better. First thing we started doing regarding this was about convening a high-level, policy, movement, where we started as hashtags included. Somebody would ask me a question that, what exactly are you talking about all this hashtagging? If you want to do something, you have to align with the language of the day, all these Gen Zs, millennials, and all that. When you talk about hashtag this, hashtag that, that gave it the needed impetus, of course, for it to go viral. And I could remember Mr. Mezzino was one of the active supporter in designing. I could remember the issue of masterclass, the issue of what they call a town hall, where we brought people, grassroots women entrepreneurs. In fact, I must tell you that is one of the movement. I call it movement because it has gone viral. You can imagine up to United Nations, IMF, World Bank, and all those other. And I'm telling you, in the next version of she's included what do you call it event, conference, or you are going to hear a lot of positivities that we've actually achieved within this little time. I can tell you, I don't know whether it is a good forum to reveal some of them, but I can assure you that in the next event, you're going to see a lot of results that came as a result of those decisions. But some of them, I could say, of course, we've been collaborating to address some of these cultural barriers that we are talking about. We've been able to reach, for example, engaging with Federal Ministry of Justice, Attorney General of the Federation, as well as Chief Justice of Nigeria. She's also a woman. She's also a woman, and she's so passionate about supporting this. She was there at that event. So we are actually trying to see, okay, legally speaking, how can we institutionalize some of these policies that that brings about those hindrances, for women to own certain, assets and all that, those collateral and cultural barriers, to be able to address them. In addition to that legal aspect, we also go into the traditional leaders. That is why in our board, we even have financial inclusion ambassadors, some of which are traditional. For example, we have a traditional ruler, somewhere in Niger State that is representing traditional council in the north. And we also have our own, financial inclusion ambassador who are also from traditional company. The message here is very clear. What we're trying to achieve here is that let us bring the people within that traditional circle so that they can be able to go in there. They speak the traditional language that every other person understands, so that we can break some of these barriers and all these kind of challenges to avoid, women having this kind of access challenge. Because to be sincere with you, The key challenge we've been having is actually those cultural and religious barriers. But if you're not talking about, the woman can actually do a lot. That psychological feeling that the women belongs to, do we call it the other room or the kitchen, as the case may be, those ones should actually be taken off the radar. So distinguished listeners, ladies and gentlemen, so at the Presidential Committee Secretariat, that is the Principal Secretariat, I think we're collaborating with a lot of agencies, including the civil society organizations, the development partners. We also convened the Development Partners Roundtable. I'm sure you saw it on December 4th, last year. And it was all about women, women, women. Just last week, we were having a series of engagement, in Egypt. I could remember one of the key investor that we got actually was ready to come into Nigeria in order to address a particular problem, I can call it right now, that is housing challenges, particularly around among the uniformed women. They have the challenges, they need support, where they can actually be resting, like military and paramilitary agencies, especially we're targeting women. So that is why we're even floating a She's Included housing scheme across the entire country. As I speak with you, everything is intact. In fact, the survey is already out there in the public space for people to indicate what kind, and it's going to be across the entire country, right? Just to be able to address certain section of, one of the painful aspects of, bringing about gender barriers. So the issues are quite a number actually. When you talk about barriers to people, to women having access to formal financial services. For me, I can also say for them to have access to economic inclusion, which is economic opportunity, there are actually quite a number. I think if you are checking up in our platform, you'll just see 2 days ago, I think we hosted the national program manager of GEEP, that is a growth, government enterprise empowerment project. The intention there is that for us to harmonize our database, Mr. Mezzino, I'm sure you can fully remember that one of the key things that we aim to achieve in She's Included is to have a national dashboard whereby all the initiatives and support around women is actually going to be taking stock. We'll be taking stock of that and be presenting to the National Economic Council if there's any need for action by any governor or any subnational or any agency that is a member, because it's a place where the entire ministers, governors and ministers, some of the key ministers are also members, so that we can have it as a window to which we can expose. If you call it naming and shaming, it might actually be right, so that we can make a presentation so that whichever state or whichever agency that is lagging, when it is mentioned at that place, then they will quickly take action, right? So those are some of the issues. So we're trying to address that, one of the key challenge, in addition to multiple other. And I'm sure you also know that at the central government, there are lots of initiatives. We are talking about Credit Corps, which was recently, inaugurated. Priorities actually for women. But one of the key challenges we keep facing is that sometimes, you make a provision, you put this space, for women to participate, but when it comes to participation, you will be shocked that you have to start making phone calls elsewhere to say, hey, you ladies, come around, come and do this, despite the priority you're actually given. So we now realize that one of the key is a systemic issue, and that systemic issue actually is linked to our cultural and religious beliefs and all of that. So I think that's why we're taking it from the root cause, so that we can be able to address it. But again, we are open for ideas, for support, for collaboration. I think I can assure you the government has open door policy, and that's why you have a desk, which right now, as I'm talking to you, I'm seated in the Secretariat of the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion in the State House. So our doors are open. We have a website, we have a link, and I'm available and reachable so that you can give us additional ideas so that we can address this major concern to address the women or gender imbalance within the access to formal financial services and also economic opportunity for our dear Nigeria. Gentlemen, thank you so much. I'm open for more questions and other comments. Thank you.
Here's Dr. Zaro. Thank you for letting us know all the amazing work that the PRECEFE is doing, and also giving us more insight as to the barriers being more of cultural and religious barriers. My next question is going to be to Ogo. Ogo, so more than 60% of Nigerian women entrepreneurs rely on informal sources of credit, and only 8% have ever accessed a bank loan. Now, you're there, you understand, what these women are going through. Can you tell us what practical challenges are hindering access to formal credit among the women-led MSMEs from your own experience?
Absolutely, Chisom. Thank you again. Thank you for the invitation to come today. And thank you, Dr. Nuruddin. Everything you said, I kept nodding my head. I don't know if I was looking like those bubbles with head nodding thing, but yes, yes, yes. Thank you. It's actually amazing work you're doing. For me, I would say that for women, it's when documentation is missing, opportunities disappear. Dr. Nuruddin said you have to look for them. You have to call them. So no ID, no access, there's no progress. Access to formal credit is one of the main stubborn challenges confronting women-led micro, small enterprises, not just in Nigeria. It's not a Nigerian problem. It's a problem across ECOWAS. It's a problem across the ECOWAS member states. 58% of micro, small, medium-sized enterprises in Africa, major contributors to household incomes, local employment, and community resilience are women. And most of them are focused on cross-border trades, and they boost regional trade and food security. But how do we get them? So for me, our own is to fund women-led MSMEs, to fund all the programs we've just heard. What do? We have to start from the beginning. Education, literacy. Mazzino said that earlier in his speech. And how do we do that? There's so much barriers. I'll focus on the Nigerian one. How do we start? Our roadblock, operating outside the informal sector, is a big deal. And why do they operate outside the informal sector? They don't have the right documentation. No CAC registration. Many women-owned businesses, especially those in the informal trade or agriculture, they are not registered. And this makes them very invisible to everyone, to programs, to donor organizations, to DFIs. No tax identification number. Why don't they want to register for all of that? Because they feel that registering for taxes make them visible for more extortion from the government, I'm sorry to say, and from the local agencies. But we are hoping that with the new tax reforms, they have better benefits and it will give them better visibility to come on board. No financial statement or bank histories. Why don't they have all of that? Informal cash-based operation, structural, basic things like bookkeeping. Without the bookkeeping, they don't have visibility. They can't see anything. You cannot support a business that you have no credit, you don't have visibility over. You cannot support them financially. You cannot train them. First of all, you can't even see them. So where are the women? Like he said, you have to go call them. Where are they? We need to find them. And how do we do that for as ESBC? We put them in sectors on different associations, whatever associations they are on. We segment them and we work with them based on their craft. What are they doing? How do we support them? What hinders them to come up and have this visibility and have that formal structure for them? But you'll be surprised to know that the informal sector is actually structured on its own way. And for me, I've seen through the years what they do. And for them, it's based on trust. But how do we bring all of that and say it's not because I know your family and I know the village chief and I know the local head, but how do we upscale your business for you? There are a lot of issues. There are a lot of barriers, like digital identity bottleneck for women. You'll be surprised that a lot of women who we think that should have phones, mobile phones, they don't have it. 25% of women in Nigeria don't have access to digitalization because the basic thing of NIN, they don't have it. And you would say NIN is everywhere open for them to go in and do their registration. But it's not that easy. For a woman who is a primary caregiver in her home to leave her community to go for registration, there are a lot of things that has to come into play. How does she leave her home? How does she get access to funding to even transport herself there? She's leaving her home. Who is going to be the alternative care provider for her children? She has to get permission from her husband to do all of that, to leave, to go for basic registration. And sometimes they get backlash in terms of, what are you going to register? Are you not selling your product? You go from the farm to the market. Don't your product get sold? You have your market days, you sell them and you come home. What's the big deal about registration? What are you doing? Sometimes they're not educated. So then you come again, not educated, they don't have that structure from where they were born. So it means they have no birth certificate, there's no utility bill. Digital literacy is very low. Then again, I would say we have to start from the beginning. Education, capacity building, education, training. So we do all of that to come together to close that gender gap in everything, in mobile, in digital integration. You have to close that gap. Closing that gap, you have to go from the beginning, from the scratch. What is the issue? Why can't you do these basic things? For a lot of us in the urban areas, we take it that it's there, it's available. You do 2 steps. Your banks have the NIN center where you can do that. There's a kiosk around the corner where you can register. But when you come to the rural areas and the very, very underserved people, they have no access to all of that. Sometimes what we take for granted here, it's a big problem for them there. And you have to start educating them. The government has to see you to support you. The people have to see you to support you, join associations. So all of that are a lot of barriers holding us back. And what again, implications of credit access. Without the formal and digital documentations, lenders, donor organizations, they can't do anything. How do they access them? Credit worthiness, 0. KYC, know your clients, know your community, know your customers, protocol, 0. Risk profiling or fraud prevention, 0. So there is so much from the formal sector to upscale the informal sector. And the informal sector is the large one, is primarily the boss that moves the community. It's primarily the informal sector. So for us as ESBC, we've designed like strategic solutions that what can we do to help them? So we've been talking with the right people, with the government, to have like mobile enabled CAC to help tailor women entrepreneurs. You know what? You don't have to go all the way out to get this done. You can do it on your phone. And now, how do we get access to the phone? We try to work with telecoms. Like we've been doing a lot of clinic drives with MTN to help during our programs to help sensitize the women. Like, okay, come, whatever phone you have, we would get someone to operate it for you. Take your phone, hand hold you, show you what you have to do, and you do it. So partnership with Identity Management Commission to help say this is what the problem is. I know you have like foot soldiers who go in to sensitize people to do it, but it's not just about sensitizing them. It's about actually doing it for them, taking their phones, teaching them, giving them access to these tools, and sometimes donate it to them because some of them, even when they have it, they have no light to charge. So a lot comes together in terms. It's crazy because if I have to start talking about one, I would bring in all the other hindrances, all the other lack of infrastructure. I would have to go into energy to say, okay, if they have the tools, if they have the phone to do all of this, they don't have the light. So the bottom line is we try to tell them that without documentation, they have no visibility. And without visibility, there is no credit. So solving all of this starts with Where are the women? We need to recognize them. Today, right now, like yesterday, build a pathway. We're trying to do that not just in Nigeria, but across the member states. Build a pathway, work with the local communities, we work with the churches, we work with the associations. Like who do you have? Who are your women? Data is a very important part for us. It helps us to talk to the government in terms of harmonizing our policies, in terms of implementing the policies already on ground. How do we do all of that? We have to know them. We have to see them. Calling them when Dr. Nuruddin said you have to call them, I smiled. I was like, okay, whatever problem I have, you have it too. We all have it. So the gender bias in terms of lending, if I come to that one again, is a long one. The structure is a traditional structure. Post-COVID, there's nothing traditional about the way we do business, the way we live, the way we do everyday living. Everything has changed. We've realized now that you don't have to walk to where you're going. I work from home. I'm having this meeting with you. Before COVID, we would all have to assemble in some venue to start having these dialogues. But now we've seen the advantage of the internet, virtual. We still all have to do what we have to do, but we don't have to break that time of time management is part of what we are doing right now. So how do we do it? There's so much, Dr. Zeno talked about co-signing from spouses, from male family members. We see all of that. The collateral is crazy. So with fintech now and EFINA, you all know what to do now. Like, how do you see visibility of MSMEs? Now we try to judge them based on their product, based on their market. POS is a simple thing as, okay, how much have you sold? Let's see your POS history. Let's see your customer. Let's see your average production for the week, for the month, for the year, and help structure it. And not only that, after doing all of that, we still have to go and defend all of this in the banking system. So that's because they use the traditional way, the traditional form. They have their criteria, which were advocating for that. All of that has to change now. It's not the old way anymore. So women face longer approval time because of the structure already in place. So all of that has to change. Limited credit history, like I said, they don't have all of that because they are basically from the informal sector. The social cultural restriction in remote areas, mobility constraint, infrastructure, they lack the digital literacy, I keep saying, disconnect from the mainstream. They don't know what's happening. They just know what they're doing as their business. And they lose the value chain of all of that. They do the minimal to get the minimal profit from what they're doing. We need to encourage them that cassava, don't sell just your cassava, turn it into gari, turn it into snacks, turn it into different things that won't take an extra 1 hour or 2 hours to do it, to improve your value chain for this and make more money. But sometimes it's just the knowledge of telling them, you know, you can do this extra and you would make amazingly 50% more than what you're making right now. Yeah. Because what do they need? That little encouragement, that little training, that little access. It's a long one. It's crazy. The cash flow mismatch with existing loan structure is another one. The fintech, the banking, the policies, everything has to change. It's a lot. So
Thank you so much,
the recommendation is bring everyone together like what you're doing and implement. The policies are there. How do we implement them for everyone? It's a lot. It's a lot.
Shares of
So I
all.
hope I did tell you.
Oh yes, oh yes,
Well,
oh yes, you did.
because
You know,
it's too much. It's too much.
yeah, yeah.
Credit
I wish we had
profiles,
time to like talk about
registration. I know.
everything.
You keep saying thank you, but
Everything.
thank
I
you.
mean,
Thank you.
there's so much. There's so much that you've just opened our eyes, you know, to, especially since you're there dealing with these women
On
led
ground.
MSMEs like on the ground, you know, and it's very interesting, you know, to understand, and it really gives us, you know, more insight as to how we can help in this regard. My next question is to Emezino. I'm just going to say just, you know, a few house rules because we do have a lot to cover, and, you know, we are already an hour into this webinar. So if we could all just keep our responses to 5 minutes, that will be very helpful. So Emezino, EFINA data, you presented that, you know, it shows a persistent gender gap in financial service use across all product types. So for instance, women account for only 24% of formal loan account holders, despite comprising nearly half of the adult population. I mean, what does your data tell us about the less visible systemic contributors to this credit exclusion?
So much, Chisom. And of course, there have been many valuable points that have been brought on by Ogo and Dr. Zauro. There are some data points which I hadn't shared, but I'll just share 2 points so I can stay very much within time. And one of them is with regard to the women's economic empowerment drivers. So from the Access to Financial Services Survey in 2023, we identified several, but the 2 data points I want to speak to are the most prominent contributors to women's economic empowerment. The first one is education, digital and financial literacy. That is responsible for 21% of the success in driving women's economic empowerment. What that means, conversely, is that the lack of education, digital and financial literacy is an unseen contributor to women's lack of engaging with the diverse formal financial services and particularly credit. And Ogo had touched on this, Dr. Zaura had also touched on this. It is a major challenge both on the demand side and the supply side. The second data point is household and group agency. That contributes to 11% of success in achieving women's economic empowerment. Conversely, the barrier is women's lack of agency, lack of access to productive assets, lack of participation in household decision making with regard to how resources are utilized at home, how investments can be made into brand new businesses, small businesses, how existing small businesses can be grown, the particular area of occupation or employment that these active women can be involved in. They don't have the agency in that decision making in the assets we spoke about. Existing assets are neither largely held by women, and in instances where they have these assets, it's not formally registered in their names. So those are some of the challenges which we have been able to identify. Another one is with regard to food security and other vulnerabilities. Whenever we are looking at the challenges of women micro entrepreneurs, we'll need to take it from 3 perspectives. So demand side, supply side, and the regulatory environment. Now, with regard to the demand side challenges, there's an acronym at the Gender Center of Excellence in EFINA, which we use to capture the 4 critical barriers. And that acronym is CANT. You know, people saying she can't, CANT, C representing cost, and there are multiple costs. There are costs of financial services and interest. There is also the cost of journeying from the home to the nearest financial service agent location. There is the opportunity cost of leaving behind her small business and missing out on customers who would come by because she needs to travel for a long time to the destination. Then there is A, which is awareness and accessibility. In the awareness piece, once again, financial literacy comes on. Then the N is the norms. Dr. Zaru had touched on that. We cannot ignore the significant impact of norms, hence the need to use male champions. Then the T has to do with trust. Lack of trust in formal financial service providers, and also there is a lack of trust also and confidence on the part of a number of women who have endured and lived with exclusion and the norms as well. Something else that is really important to mention, and I'm conscious that I have just about a minute, so I'm going to run through this real quickly, is a lack of IDs. And because of lack of formal identification, it becomes a challenge for formal financial service providers who have credit to comfortably avail the credit to the women micro entrepreneurs who need that. Then unconscious biases inherent in product design. There is a belief, and this is not intentional most of the time, but many of the persons within the product labs are largely men, which is a problem on its own. In a country where 51% of the adult population are women, the product lab should, at the minimum, be evenly split between men and women. They don't have the methodology to design the products appropriately and don't recognize the importance of data that can lead to informed product design in going through the process. So they have a one size fits all. And the last point I'll mention is that the women's segment is not homogeneous at a federal level and even within states. So the data we have enables institutions to focus on what is peculiar to the subnationals and also looking at the country at large. I'll stop there.
Cheers, Amazino. So I liked, the points you touched on regarding agency, lack of ID, and the unconscious bias in the products, developed by financial institutions. So I think for me, and just for the purpose of the audience, right? When you're talking about agency, women not really having a say, you're talking about women in the rural or the urban areas or both.
So we're talking of a challenge which exists across, but it is more prevalent within the rural
Rural
settings.
areas. Okay, great. And then for the lack of ID issue, I mean, there have been policies, government enforcing the need for people to register to obtain their NIN and so on and so forth. What is the issue? Why aren't women able to get this? Why? Why do they still lack identification?
So one very quick way to look at it, Chisom, is those four major pillars, which are barriers for women on the demand side. There are versions of those pillars that are barriers on the supply side. So there's the cost element when it comes to onboarding more women and enabling them to have access to NINs. There is hardware involved. There is transportation to location in the hinterland to get them registered. So if you look at the T, there's also a trust factor that these people who are coming with these devices, what really is the interest? And the communication, how is communication passed on to the women to give them comfort? You're speaking to their heart. Without that vernacular communication and the right content at the right time, the women come out to be registered in the first place.
Yeah. And I think the last one for me is really the unconscious gender bias. And I think maybe Dr. Nuruddin can help us with this later. I don't know if the problem is enforcement, because we do know that even from consumer protection regulations, CB and FCCPC, financial institutions are not allowed to create products that are gender biased. They have to create products that both genders, are able to use equally. So for me, it's amazing that, there are still products that, basically exclude women. I think maybe the problem, it might be an enforcement issue, but maybe Dr. Nuruddin can throw more light on that when we get to him. But my next question is for Michael Ogba. Michael, so women are 20% less likely than men to own a smartphone in Nigeria. And only 9% of women have access to digital credit products compared to 15% of men. Can you tell us what digital and trust-related constraints are limiting women's access to technology-enabled credits?
Thank you very much. I want to appreciate Dr. Nuruddin. Ogo spoke from the heart. Zeno is an expert in what he's talking about. And Chisom, thank you for coordinating this very, very well. There are so many reasons. Zeno has mentioned some of them. Part of it is cost, part of it is infrastructure, part of it is bias norms, and part of it is the access to finance. Decision makers, especially in the north, are men. So they acquiring that is not as simple as just going and picking up just one thing or the other and paying for it. Let me use the 5 minutes I have to speak from the streets. Of all the people that have spoken, I think I'm in a better position to tell you the story we at Sitamo Technology Limited have experienced. We are registered as CAC July 17, 2019. Between that time and now, Sitamo has disbursed well over 14 billion naira of other people's money. That's a lot. That's a lot. And mind you, we chose our niche market very well. We want to cater to hardworking market women at the bottom of the economic pyramid. That is our vision and that is our goal. It has been a very difficult journey, to be honest. We have persevered. For 6 years, we have tried. Our model is simple. So we go to a market, look for who is the market leader. The Yaloja in Lagos. Okay, market leader, are there people in your market that want to borrow and pay back? She said, yeah. We collect minimum 20 names. We talk to them, interview them. What do you sell? I sell this, I sell that. We just take basic information. Like Ogo said, we are creating the data for them because most of them don't keep records. So we give you 20,000 naira loan and we take 1,000 as our interest. That's all you are paying. So we take that 1,000. Then every week, our staff, agent field officer will come to the market and take 5,000 week 1, 5,000 week 2, 5,000 week 3, and 5,000 week 4. Once the person is able to do that, the loan is fully repaid. The person can borrow again. No collateral is required. It is a group lending because if you don't pay back, it will affect others getting the loan. And at some point, we're in 28 states in Nigeria, in 208 markets. We had to pull back because we encountered a lot of challenges. I don't want to dwell on the challenges. I want to speak to the positives. The positives is that because Sitamo exists, over 20,000 hardworking market women have had access to micro loans. And it's excitement. My mother sold what they call mama puts. And looking back, if somebody like Sitamo had helped her, she wouldn't have suffered the way she suffered before she passed on. And that is what is the driving force for me. We are focused on women. Like I told you at the beginning of this discussion, that 96% of our customers are women. It's intentional. Over 90% of our staff are women. It's also intentional. Yes, you can say that they don't get help, but we exist to help the women. And it's intentional. And we are not apologetic about it. Let me just end by speaking about collaboration. GIZ, everybody know them, is a Dutch NGO. We partner with them. Financial training, I always joke, I tell my staff that nobody can do what Sitamo does. Why? Because nobody goes to the market to train women. We use the material supplied by GIZ to train them, financial literacy, tell them how to keep record, how to do your business, and all that. And the reward we get is that the default is lowered anytime you train these market women. We do that. There is Horti Nigeria. Horti Nigeria is a Dutch NGO, international Dutch NGO. They train farmers, give farmers everything they require, but they don't give them money. We have been financing 36 farmers in Zaria in Kaduna State for the past 2 years. Guess what the default rate is? 0. Horti Nigeria gave Sitamo an award because of the collaboration. We also partner with Credit Corps has recognized the phenomenal impact Sitamo is making, and they reached out to us, and we are partnering. We are trying to access over 200 million loan through Credit Corps so that we can expand what we are doing. There is this Association of Mobile Money and Bank Agents in Nigeria, AMBAN. we're also in collaboration with them, but we also tell them that we want 80% of the people we are giving money to be women. We want to help women. We are helping women and will continue to help women. EFINA knows us. That was why they contacted us too, because they have also seen the phenomenal things we are doing. Bill and Melinda Gates consultants were here in our office to try to see what has made us successful. I think it's the vision, and we exist to help hardworking market women at the bottom of economic pyramid. It's not yet over, but we know we are getting there. With this collaboration, I've noted my co-panelist, Dr. Nuruddin, I'll reach out to, so because we can do more if we partner more. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Michael.
Yeah.
Dr. Nuruddin, my next question is to you. So the 2022 National Development Plan identifies financial inclusion for women as critical to unlocking Nigeria's growth potential. Can you tell us what policy tools or regulatory innovations, aside the ones that you mentioned earlier, is the federal government under pre-CEFA deploying or considering promoting access to affordable credit for women entrepreneurs?
Thank you so much, Chisom, and my co-panelist, and thank you so much for shedding more light, on this, our journey. If you could remember, this inclusion, both economic and financial inclusion journey, is a continuous journey, actually, because even if we cross the borderline, we still have to face the aspect of sustainability. It is that sustainability, actually, that even brought us right here where we are. So, the National Economic Development Plan, as well as the midterm, something have also recognized the need for incorporating such gender sensitivity in order to ensure that there is that balance. So from us, from the Precify, what we do here, our major work is actually implementation of ASO Accord. And of course, ASO Accord speaks to collaboration based on the speaker's pitch you sent to us. I know there is a section that more speaks to collaboration. But for these particular specific questions in terms of the policy side, I heard of my dear friends, Ms. Mike and Ogo, speaking to specific interventions their agencies are doing. That's quite why, but for us as government, government has no business in doing business. What is our business is to create enabling environment for business people to do business in order to make business money, right? So in that regard, we are collaborating also with relevant agencies, particularly of government and that of private sector individuals, in order to institutionalize gender sensitivity in whatever policy that is actually coming up. For example, we are collaborating with some development partners, to advocate for gender-led budgeting. When it comes to the budgeting system for the whole country, we should ensure that such things that touch the lives of both men and women are actually balanced in a way. Not only budgeting, we also work around even the aspect of gender bond, where we have what do you call it? Right now, we know we have FGM bonds, we have NTBs, we even have Sukuk and all of that. So how can we now come up with some low-level access, to sort of like a finance so that women can actually, have some sort of encouragement by even tagging it, gender bond, it encourages our own, women, to be able to patronize some of these, just to have a feel of being a part of. And I've just mentioned to you that we are rolling out She's Included, housing scheme. Basically, if you look at it, it's also encourage women, because we're talking about low costs, funding. We have a renewed hope agenda, renewed hope housing, renewed hope this, renewed hope that. But again, we are specific on this particular one simply because to encourage our women to patronize, not only to patronize, it's going to be something that's going to be like quite accessible and of course as affordable, right? Working with the Federal Ministry of, working with Federal Mortgage Bank as well as the Family Homes Fund in addition to other investors that are going to deploy in their funding, to work with we are also working in that regard with Minister of Women Affairs to see that we touch lives in order to address the gender imbalance in that regard. And I'm sure during the launch of hashtag She's Included program, which is domiciled in this principle in the office of the vice president, there were mention of different verticals in order to work with them to address those issues. One of such example is within the education sector. We are coming up, recently federal government talked about issue of vocational trainings and all that. So we're trying to institutionalize to ensure that women have their own priority. We're not saying that women should take the whole of the thing, but what we're saying here is that let there be some sort of balance. We are even also working about the gender procurement, which is also a kind of like a movement that has been done because, this contract aspect is also being dominated by the other folks. But it's still, it's something we're trying to advocate such that the government can also build into that kind of sensitivity so that people like my co-panelist, Ogo, can actually patronize some of these opportunities to secure some of these contracts and all of that so as to execute. Why is this so? Because there's a mindset that actually women are sort of like more genuine, and when you give them something, they are more likely, to obey the extant laws of the land. And this government, is trying to ensure that the law of the land is actually being what do you call it, adhered to. So, so a lot of initiatives actually, when you look at the private sector, for example, when you look at the private sector, for example, the GIZ, my dear friend, also did mention of, we are also working with them in order to develop some products that are gender sensitive. To be sincere with you, locally and internationally, that project hashtag She's Included actually attracted a lot of initiative. As I speak with you now, the database is being panelized, and then again the dashboard is also being developed in order to ensure that we take a stock of all the activities happening around the country. I know of other isolated efforts actually that is going on across different ministries, departments, and agencies, but we are saying let's do our own internally. I can give you an example. Internationally, a lot of agencies are signing to Wi-Fi code, including our own central bank. They've signed to Wi-Fi code, that is, and many other entities locally and internationally. But what we are saying, this hashtag is included. Let us also have our own local brand, Niger-made brand for women, right? So within this space, we're addressing the healthcare aspect, we're addressing the education aspect, we're addressing quite a lot of other areas. So let that sink into our head that this is a Niger thing, right? So we're also advocating same to other African countries that we are leading, and of course other global partners, so that they can also understand our own perspective. I can tell you that during the recent what do you call it, women event that happened at the United Nations, this same hashtag She's Included was actually unveiled. And as I'm speaking with you now, next 2 months, that is in the month of September, we're going to be in Onga, coming up in September, and I can assure you that this hashtag is included is actually one of the language you're going to advocate to the global audience, because I did the same thing just last week in Egypt, as one of the Pan-African engagement in order to enhance the ties between Nigeria and other African countries, leveraging on AFCFTA. You saw a lot of MOUs, it was all over the media, right? That we signed between Nigerian government and also the Egyptian government. But in addition to that, we've been able to secure certain investors that are deploying, coming into the country. One of such that I gave example is actually to come in and finance and also promote this, housing project for women in order to close gender gap within the housing deficit that exists in Nigeria. Again, now look at the credit score, but in terms of the numbers, if you interrogate the numbers, the only challenge we could have, even the student loans fund that even the challenge you could also have is that you have put this thing in place, but because of those norms and other barriers, traditional and religious, hindering women to come into that space. And for us under this administration, we are eager to deliver. We are eager to achieve results. So for that reason, sometimes you have to close your eyes and say, okay, if my other folks, the women are not there, then men, it's also just come and grab it, and so that you can go and advance it to the women back in your homes. Right? So, but again,
Thank you, Dr.
a lot of other issues are actually coming, and I can assure you that we are ready to push further. Until that time when women equal men, and at the same time, but I was also asking my honorable minister at some point that, okay, when you are saying women, so are you saying when we get to a point whereby women achieve more than 50% than men, are we going to now turn it back to say, okay, gender inclusion now is talking about men inclusion on work. So I think this is a question that our women on these folks needs to answer. Thank you so much.
That's a good one, Dr. Zaro. I would imagine we will keep things equitable. We will continue to a point that things are equitable. Thank you so much for shedding more light on that. Ogo, my next question is to you. So across West Africa, we have different cooperative models, savings groups, peer guarantee schemes, and we have the Roscas, which help women bypass the formal lending restrictions. Are there community-driven or informal finance models that could be scaled in Nigeria, to sustainably increase women's credit access? And we know that we do have certain, like some of the fintechs, we have Isusu that has similar like Agile model, the Rosca. We have Carbon, who also has the Carbon Circles, that allows people save, digitally. And it's similar to the Money Fellow structure in Egypt. So are there any other community-driven or informal finance models that, can be scaled, whether digitally, whether non-digitally, to, help increase women's access to credit?
Okay. Thank you, Chisom. I want to say this is a very beautiful webinar. I've enjoyed myself and I've learned a lot. I'm reaching out to all the other panelists, and I think there's a lot we can do together regarding everything. So for me, in Nigeria, I would say like 60% entrepreneurs rely on the informal finance. It's very important to them. And like we've all been hearing, 8% access financially loans through the formal sector. So to bridge this gap, there are a lot of community-driven models. Like you said, the Rosca, rotating savings and credit associations. Like you said, Isusu, Ajor, Association Incorporation, peer guarantee corporations, village savings and loan associations. For us in ESBC, I would say, okay, 5 scalable models for Nigeria. Digitalize the Rosca, formalize Isusu. Through mobile apps, they've started doing that. There's the Piggy Invest, which creates loan history and expands the reach to rural women. And they currently mobilize over, I don't know, hundreds of billions right now in terms of that. Our members actually work with them. There's the peer guarantee cooperative. It's been successful in Ghana, Senegal. We're trying to bring that here where the loan access they would have significant number of activities from the Nigerian part. We recommend guaranteeing schemes under the ECOWAS MSME charter. There's a charter that we follow and which has been helping us in terms of all the protocols and us implementing all of that. There's the village savings and the loan associations where community-led associations, they pull money together. Like I would say again, the Isusu and the Agile kind. Then for us with you now, the fintech hybrid credit model, it needs to be revamped, changed from the regular traditional one. There should be different criteria now in terms of POS accessibility for history, mouth-to-mouth guarantee in terms of different access when you assess the business, it should be different right now. So with the fintech hybrid credit model, let's leverage on the systematic scoring and mobile usage to formalize informal records. Mm-hmm. Digitalizing we need to digitalize the informal lending platforms. When we use what we have right now currently, like our NIN is enough for an identity for any person, because even getting that NIN, I had all the different barriers for that. But something my panelists did mention that is actually a problem for us is lack of network. It takes a lot to pull a woman, a mother, from the rural area to come to the urban area for registration, only for you to get there, and there's no internet service. then you have to go back and repeat this 2, 3, 4 times before you actually get that NIN number. Sometimes you have to, I wouldn't call it bribe on the webinar. You have to be a little bit more friendly with the workers for them to let you know when it's time, it's a good time for you to come and do your capturing. So all of that, it's not in the books, but we all know what goes through all of that. So if we can change all of that narrative, then one focus that we have a platform. It's called the 50 Million Women Entrepreneurs. It's an ECOWAS platform. It's run by the Gender Development Center in ECOWAS. And it brings all entrepreneurs, all women across the member states, everyone together. It doesn't give you money. It highlights all the accesses where you can find everything you want in terms of training, in terms of funding, in terms of support, in terms of business to business collaboration, everything. We try to, from a woman's perspective, we try to look at it and say, these are what hinders us, these are what limit us from scaling up, from being more resilient for our business to last. Because the truth is that a lot of women come into the business not to cover a gap, a needed gap in the community or in the society. It's for survival.
Yeah.
It's to put food on the table. So then they would say, okay, this is what I can do. How can I be productive with it? That's it. It's not any niche in the society that needs to be covered. It's for survival. So that's how they start. So we need
Thank
all
you
your
so much,
and
Ogo.
everything we want. That's why the SSO and all of that work. Okay, I'm trying to keep up to just
Thank you. No, thank
we do
you.
have access to platforms on business to business management that we can always use.
Thank you. And I mean, even your recommendations regarding fintechs and just revamping their current lending strategies,
Models.
obviously, yeah. Obviously, CBN would also need to be involved in that because most of these requirements are CBN related. So my next question is to Emezino. Emezino, so several fintech and microfinance institutions in Nigeria are piloting gender intentional credit products. Example, they use psychometric scoring, mobile-based onboarding, flexible repayment methods, so on and so forth. What innovations have shown promise in reaching more women? Which do you think have shown promise so that, these can be focused on?
Thank you so much, Chisholm. And indeed, there have been a lot of efforts in this regard. One thing which we need to bear in mind is, what does innovation mean? And the simple definition of innovation is a new idea, a new method, or a new device. So we focus a lot on the device piece, but then the new idea and the new method, we can pay attention to that. And we have seen successful measures which are scalable around, for example, leveraging supply chains, which is the reason why in my presentation initially, I mentioned the role of FMCGs. So when you think about the challenges that some women micro entrepreneurs they face around, they receive the revenue from their business and that readily gets diverted to cater to family needs and other emergencies. So they really don't grow from the level where they are. However, if you come up with another method, that's the innovation. And with the FMCG, you have arrangements such as, instead of providing the loan in cash or a credit to the account, provide stock and then let the stock be sold. And once it is sold, then the funds are now remitted through appropriate channels in the best way that can be sent back to the FMCG. And in that way, this has actually been tested and seen to work and enabled financial service providers start building records of these women in the markets. And then that now enabled the women qualify for more credit. That is more stock. Now, one thing which we've also found to be very critical and beneficial and has been working is about the communication. So this is also about a new method. Don't communicate in the same way when trying to get women micro entrepreneurs onboarded. And of course, I'm sure that CTMO Limited has had a lot of experience in this regard. For you to determine the right kind of communication to the women micro entrepreneurs, you need to understand the links in the chain of the credit cycle. So there's a period where you are introducing the credit to the women micro entrepreneurs. Communication has to be bespoke there. There's a period when the women are being onboarded. They need to understand, what is this credit I'm trying to get myself involved with? There needs to be bespoke communication there. Then when the credit is running, like in the example that Michael gave about the 4-week turnaround for repayment of a loan, during that 4-week period, there is communication required to manage the relationship. And the kind of communication that makes sense is not just communication around the product itself and repayment. We need to show care, because the context of the women includes many factors which are not directly related to formal financial services, which includes the social issues, the caregiving responsibilities, the reality that being a housewife, for example, is a full-time job, and therefore coupling that with being in the market, 2 jobs, plus unpaid caregiving responsibilities, other challenges around gender-based violence, other challenges around the health of the children and also the women themselves. So the communication during that period must bear in mind the context. Then, of course, at the point of full repayment, there's a different communication. You want the woman to come back for more. You want her to spread the words to other women who need credit to close the gap. So we've seen that as a successful measure beyond leveraging FMCGs, also the importance of ensuring that the communication is appropriate as per content, it is relevant to her use case, and it is made known to her in the language of the heart and at the right time. Timing is also very critical as well. We've also found out that it is important to recognize who the gatekeepers are. And we currently have a project which we are running, whereby we are leveraging not just community leaders, but also leveraging the male champions, the men who are important in the lives of these women, and ensuring that they are converted. And the conversion we're talking about is not just letting them know, okay, it's good for your sister or your wife to have access to formal financial services, but it's also in trying to work on the root itself to ensure that they have good communication systems with the women we want to empower, and they also enable these women to have freedom to get into economic activity and access formal financial services. So I'll stop there.
That's amazing. Now, so the next segment is just going to deal with collaboration, and because we want to have time for questions, at least 20 minutes from the audience, I'm going to, sorry, please bear with us as we limit your responses to just 3 minutes each, please, so that the audience too would have time to ask questions. So Dr. Nuruddin, we've seen global experience shows that sustainable credit access for women requires multi-stakeholder coalitions involving the public, private, and of course, third sector actors. How can Nigeria strengthen such collaborations to unlock skill and inclusivity in its women credit ecosystem? I mean, you've already given examples of working with Ogo and Mr. Michael Ogba, but are there any other collaborations that you think would unlock skill and inclusivity in its women's credit ecosystem, in our women's credit ecosystem?
All right, thank you so much, Chisom, and thanks a lot to the person that asked the question. I think it's quite beautiful. So I think my answer is that the question has already been answered by my previous speeches. So let me tell you, the main reason why we are in this office today is because of collaboration. It is when right from the beginning of this administration, we realized that there's a need for us to actually collaborate between the private and public sector. That's why this particular office was set. And remember, Chisom, during December 2023, during the launch of EFINA A2F report, in I think what do you call it, Eco Hotel in Lagos last year, December, I was there, virtually. One of the key recommendations then was to actually have a structure that coordinate high-level interagency collaboration, isn't it? It's one of your report, one of the recommendations the A2F team actually gave. So it's one of the answer to that call is actually why this administration, because for you to know that the administration is actually fully aware of what is actually going on. In fact, in this call, I can assure you that certain steps based on the recommendation would actually be taken. So it is an offshoot of that this particular structure actually was set up. Do you understand? And the first thing we did was signing the ASO Accord precisely on 25th of April 2024. And the ASO Accord is nothing more than collaboration. Three things are involved. Number one, recognizing the importance of economic and financial inclusion under this administration. Second one is the commitment of this administration to support the economic opportunities and financial inclusion, which of course is the same thing as EFINA, enhancing financial inclusion and advancement, right? Good. So finally is the collaboration. And this collaboration, we are saying we are promoting private partnership among the private sector. Nowadays is about collaboration. It's no longer cutthroat competition for you to edge your partner out of business. It's about you to collaborate. Then public partnership among the public sector agencies also to collaborate. And then finally, the two should also come together. And that's why I've listed out quite a lot of collaboration that we're doing. Remember, this year, UNGA for this year, the topic of actually is that of a cooperative, isn't it? Cooperative movement. So that is why I said we are also going to be there live, and it's all about collaboration with both partners, development partners, and among this conversation, women's access to credit actually stands out. Do you understand? I've mentioned quite a lot of other initiatives we're working on. I think I did not spoke about the initiative we are also doing with NIDA, National Information Technology Development Agency, which is about digital literacy. And within this digital literacy, I think recently you've seen the launching of something that we did for women in terms of specialized training for them in collaboration with the Renewed Hope Initiative of Her Excellency, the First Lady, of Nigeria. So a lot of conversation we're doing is actually about speaking to enhancing access to both credit, again, opportunities, again, and also literacy. Just 2 days ago, I hosted the leadership of this JEEP program that I said, I think it's on our handle.
Yeah.
What we are doing here is about market money. Everybody knows about that. Trader money and also farmer money, right? So one of the things we want to touch live is actually to touch for the women, because we know that gender sensitivity is actually very critical, it's very germane. And just the same day also, we hosted the president of the apex body of the cooperatives as well. The whole conversation is that for us to come together, I think we've also fixed a particular date by precisely the end of October in order to bring together the whole country, just like we did for the She's Included, we're going to do for cooperatives. And that cooperative is actually something for women. My dear friend here, Ogo, speaks about Esusu, and Michael speak about microcredit and all of that. So, and I'm sure, just like Mr. Michael said, 96% of their beneficiaries are actually women. We at the apex level, the presidential, at the villa, the strategic level of this administration, we are saying that please we are encouraging such kind of collaborations, and of course, to get to people to do all of that. So everything we are doing here is for women. In fact, my humble self, I'm for woman, because she just permit me
Thank
to.
you.
If
Yes,
woman
thank
did
you,
not
Dr.
permit me, I won't be
Zaro.
here. Oh, thank you so much.
Exactly. So, Dr. Zaro, I think for me, one very important aspect, especially for financial institutions that are regulated, we know that, this current this lending space is governed by, unregulated and regulated lenders. So even looking at the financial institutions that are regulated by the CBN, as I had mentioned earlier, we have consumer protection laws that generally reduce that gender bias or restrict gender bias products, but there aren't really that many, at least obvious laws that say, oh, you need to lend to women, you can give women reduced interest rates. In fact, sometimes, we think about these things and we're like, oh, what will CBN say? They will get penalized if we do this, if we do that, things that are more related to women. So it will be good if maybe the PRECEFI can work with the CBN and some of these other regulators to generally open up that space for women, give financial institutions, regulated financial institutions, more incentives, in relation to, lending to women so that it helps reduce that gender gap. Ogo, my next question is to you. So you had already mentioned that you have a platform, focused on, women MSMEs and so on and so forth. But what opportunities exist from your own perspective in relation to the cross-border collaboration or inclusive credit policies and programs?
Okay, all right, thank you. Try to keep up to time. So I know across West Africa, the credit gap for women-led MSMEs is not just a national challenge in Nigeria, it's across the region. As Executive Director of ESBC, we're very focused on the cross-border collaboration to unlock inclusive finances at scale. There are different strategies we use currently right now. First of all, I would say ESBC's role in the regional MSME framework. We serve as technical and advocacy partner to ECOWAS institutions. We shape in MSME's financial framework under the ECOWAS MSME Charter. We facilitate alignment, national MSME policies, regional instruments like the ETLS, the AFTA protocol, and the Agenda 2063. Our coalition is currently piloting multiple country MSMEs diagnostic to harmonize financial gaps and policy responses across member states. And apart from the 12 member states we have now, we still work with Mali, Niger, and Burkina Faso. We work currently strongly with them, so they're part of ESBC. So we also focus on harmonizing credit guarantee scheme. Fragmented guarantee scheme limits scalability, we all know all of that. So ESBC, we advocate for regional credit guarantee platform backed by ECOWAS and regional DFIs. It would allow risk sharing across borders, enabling banks and fintech to lend to women-led MSMEs with reduced exposures. We've seen all the barriers, cultural barriers, institutional barriers, educational barriers, so all of those barriers. So we're exploring models similar to the Afreximbank Financial Action for Women in Africa. And we actually work very closely with them. Right. With Africa. And another one again is the cross-border digital ID and credit system. It's very important for us. Many women entrepreneurs do not have identity. They lack that interoperable digital identity, or should I say portable credit history. I've been saying that through POS, through market exposure, you can actually see their visibility. Another thing again we do is the regional peer learning platform for women inclusion. Like all the panelists said, literacy, capacity building, training, collaboration is very important. So we convene across, we just finished a program called the ECOWAS Caravan 2025, where members of some departments around ECOWAS and institutions moved from Abidjan all the way to Lagos across the border to see all the NTBs that are sales and trade across regional integration. What are they? How do we work with the right stakeholders to take out all these NTBs so we can have competitive edge and we can scale our business and be more resilient in the future? So influencing ECOWAS and after level strategy, ESBC is actually engaging with ECOWAS Commission, the AFTA Secretariat, to enable inclusive credit policies for trading and investment framework.
Thank you so much.
For gender response finances, for youth, for women with disability. So we try. We do a lot of
effort. Thank you. Yeah, you're doing a lot. You're doing a lot.
So
thank you so much. Thank you so much.
And thank you, Dr. Rodin, Michael.
My next question, Zeno, is to you. So data-driven advocacy has influenced policy shifts globally. How can EFINA's gender-based disaggregated data and insights be better leveraged to build coalitions and basically drive collaboration across the public and private sector?
It's a lot, Chisholm.
And we know you've been using it, so you can just
Oh yeah, I will just endeavor to be pretty brief, but I'm going to post on the chat the link to our Women's Economic Empowerment dashboard. So I was really excited, when I heard Dr. Zairo remind us about the fact that the national dashboard is on the way. So presently we can access the Women's Economic Empowerment dashboard and look at multiple indices, multiple dimensions that enable us really understand the level of exclusion, the level of access to credit that currently exists in different regions and different states. Related to that as well is our state fact sheets. So before carrying out any deployment of a credit solution into specific states, and these 36 states are all unique individually. I mentioned that homogeneity of women is the wrong perception and approach that the supply side has proceeded with over the years, which is why the gap persists. In fact, the gap actually increased by 1 percentage point between 2020 and 2023. So once you get to the state fact sheets of EFINA, you'll be able to have at least 6 pages dedicated to each state. It's a 310-page document. For example, if you want to invest in Katsina, you would see that there are 2.3 million women in Katsina. The level of education is very low, beyond primary education. When you have all these nuggets of information, you can design appropriately and know how to get into those geographies with the gender disaggregated data. You see the size of the opportunity with regard to women, and you can deploy and manage those relationships and see them grow.
That's amazing. That's amazing, amazing. No, thank you for that. Michael, my last question is to you. So basically, Emezino had already mentioned that addressing this gap really is about addressing demand and supply side challenges. And, would also say regulation as well. So what kind of partnerships and collaboration opportunities do you think lenders like Sitiamo Technology will need to drive credit expansion in your target markets?
Thank you very much, Chisom. The answer is very simple. The type that Dr. Nuruddin has mentioned. I told you that we are collaborating with Credit Corp. We are going to assess 200 million micro lending. We were in Aba together. They see that we have these customers. We have 20,000 customers that have benefited one way or the other. So those collaborations, I'll reach out to Ogo to see if there are developmental finances that can come. We are there in the market. We can make you touch these customers, one customer at a time. There are certain things some people cannot do. Credit Corp has tried to use the deposit money banks to reach out to the last mile. They've not succeeded because these people don't have what it takes to get to the bottom of the economic pyramid. We do. So the collaborations we require, whether it is Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, Ford Foundation, whoever wants to come into this place, we are there. We can use data to show you what we've done so far. The last point I want to make is that Nigeria has the highest number of open markets in the whole world. Brazil, India, China, they are more populated than Nigeria, but they have supermarkets, super malls. But when you talk about open markets, the way we know it, Nigeria is number one. That is why I'm very enthusiastic about the future of Sitiamo, because that target market can only grow. It's not reducing. Thank you, Chisom.
Thank you so much, our esteemed panelists. Now we're going to throw the floor open to the audience for questions. I think we've had a few questions, but if, I think we can take about 3 people. If you have your hands raised, if you want to ask a question via audio.
Actually, there are questions in the chat already.
Okay, great. So I'm going to take some of these questions. Okay, so we have Samuel Wanko here. He has about 2 questions. How can we measure success beyond access as it relates to the topic what does meaningful use of credit by women look like? Because it's one thing to have access, it's another to utilize the access giving and become credit worthy. Who should we pose that to?
I'm in the market, I can answer.
Yes,
the way
Michael.
the way we measure it is that when we come to you, you have borrowed. We always have what we call market visitation. It happens every quarter. So we'll come back. You had one shop before, now you have two. You are sending 2 of your kids to school, now you are sending 4. You used to buy 10 cartons of something, now you are buying 20. So there are many ways to measure. It's not difficult.
Agreed, Michael. The
We are
second
commissioning
question
impact
from
studies. We are
Samuel.
commissioning impact studies in collaboration with JPAL in order to measure the impact of some of these initiatives across the country. Soon, I'm sure EFINA could be of help. So we'll reach out to you guys soon. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zauro. So the next question from Samuel Wanko is, in the sphere of data, are we collecting the right kind of data to understand and address the nuances of women's credit access gaps across different entities, like rural, urban, disabled, etc., or are we just using the identity of a single sect to draw up our data? Emezino, I think you can help with this.
Thanks a lot, Chisom. And indeed, we have data available through our most recent national survey, which we conducted with the National Bureau of Statistics, the A2F 2023, that shows the number of adult women who are in the rural areas and those that are in the urban areas. Because when we carry out our research, we go to every one of the 36 states, and we also get to the Federal Capital Territory. So just to give you comfort that we look at those dimensions is based on the quantum of women in the rural environment that has informed the fact that we're focusing really on getting to those women who are excluded. Looking at the entire population, we have about 21 million women that constitute the addressable market when it comes to access to formal financial services. These women are excluded, and also there's a proportion of them who are underbanked. So rural versus urban is part of the information we gather. But not just gathering, we inform the ecosystem so that financial service providers can focus on those women in the rural areas, bearing in mind their unique hurdles.
Thank you so much, Emezino. My next question is from Olubukola Funsho Sani. Bukola is asking, what is the framework by the government that can be leveraged to promote NIN and credit score policy to promote digital literacy among rural dwellers, especially women, to ensure they are not left behind in this fast-growing digital world? I think Dr. Nuruddin, you can help with that. What is the framework? What framework is being used by the government to promote NIN and the credit score policy for women, so that they can have access to formal financing?
Okay, thank you so much once again. Recently, there's this publicity that came out during the conclusion of our technical committee meeting, which the CEO of EFINA was also part of. I could remember. One of the critical challenges we're trying to unlock was that of identity, particularly around the pronouncement of Mr. President for approval to support 15 million households across Nigeria, with this, conditional cash transfer. I'm sure the whole world is aware of that. But one of the key hindrances, one of the key challenges we had was that of identity issue. A lot of people, especially the poorest of the poor who are living in the creeks of the country, they do not have identity. And despite the very beautiful effort actually be put in place by NIMC as well as NIPS, in order to address that. I'm sure it was also on that clip, Madam Engineer Ibiso Ekoka, the CEO of NIMC, was actually very clear, in terms of the strategies and all of that they're putting in place to ensure that not only women, but the entire Nigerians are captured. So a lot is actually going on in there, to the extent that even the challenges we used to have around the change of name or mistakes, the birthday, change of birthday or other corrections. These are things that there's a link on your phone now. You can be able to address those concerns. I like people patronizing the website of NIMSI, you can be able to see clear-cut work that is actually going on in there. And of course, recently, in terms of framework, like I said, around women, a couple of other things are going on. But for us in the State House, I think we've just institutionalized this issue of dashboard so that we can be able to take a stock of everything that is going on around the country with the women, in addition to the effort, of course, being worked on by Minister of Women Affairs. So we are also going to do some sort of survey in order to ensure that, and one of the parameters, is actually to take the gender as one of the clear parts so that we will know those women who are involved. So the national framework is actually, within that space, as well as the other effort that is one. But I'm saying this because I'm saying at this level, we're talking about the harmonized one. As I'm talking to you now, multiple agencies and what do you call it, both public and private sector, they are doing sort of measurement ways. And one of sort, of course, is H2F, in addition to many other ones that are going on. But for us at this level, we're trying to say, okay, let us harmonize all of them to bring about one-stop shop that can speaks to all this issue. And that is the ongoing effort at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Zaro, for shedding more light on that. I have another question from Chukwuemeka Oyimadu. Chukwuemeka is asking, and I would pose this to Michael Ogba since he's in the lending space. How do you navigate the intersection between banks' profit-driven financing approaches and women's need for more flexible partnership-oriented financial products, especially those that consider business type, longer moratorium periods, and other supportive features?
Okay, thank you. The unfortunate truth is that our funds are expensive, number one. Number two, they're also short tenured. So we don't give 1 year facility like banks. But what we do is that where banks will require collateral, we don't. Where bank will put bureaucracy, we don't. So again, there are broad lending, but we have chosen market women because if you're a market woman, there is no way within a week you will not be able to sell and pay back. So we kind of unveil what lending are we providing, and we have chosen to do for lending. There will be agriculture, there will be manufacturing, there are other things, but it depends on, like if we have developmental funds, we can lend longer. If we have developmental funds or grants, we can do more than what we are doing now. You can reach out after this, we can engage better. Thank you.
Cheers, Michael. Cheers for that. And, as someone that works in the financial technology space as well and a regulated lender, it's important for consumers to also know that, there are certain financial ratios that banks also need to meet, and these are set by the regulator. So if you're not meeting those financial ratios, you could get penalized, which also adds to what people may seem as the profit-driven approach. And definitely you can't be in business without making profits, otherwise your business is going to shut down. So it's really about looking for a more balanced way and doing more of a competitor analysis to see what other people are offering and, trying to cater your product to the market and the space in general. So you're not, for example, I would imagine this question centers around interest rates. People talk about high interest rates from financial institutions. They don't make sense, which is why a lot of women don't even like taking loans. I was talking to a friend of mine the other day. She owns a business, a butchery business, and she actually was supposed to get a loan from a development financial institution, but she didn't want to. So, basically the interest rate, yes, is a problem. Banks need to make money. They need to be compliant with CBN requirements. But there are also products that are catered to specific markets, and that's where that balance comes in. For example, at Carbon, we do a lot of industry events just to find out, what the market wants, what they would like their bank to do for them. And we take this back and we use it to cater products, to our customers. So there is, a means of creating that balance, and hope that answers your question. So it's 11:55. I'm going to hand over to Emmanuel. Thank you so much, Dr. Nuruddin, Emezino, Michael, and Ogo. for sharing with us today your wonderful insights. And we have taken all this back, and I know that and hopefully this webinar would also create, a lot of partnerships that can help close the gap to women's access to financing. Emmanuel, over to you.
Thank you so much, Chisom. Can you hear me? Great. All right. Thank you, Chisom, for the wonderfully moderated panel discussion. I also like to thank our panelist, Dr. Nuruddin Zaro, who is the technical advisor to the president on economic and financial inclusion and leading a whole body of work there. Ogo, thank you so much. You came from field and you walked straight into this conversation. Those insights have been very, very engaging. And to Michael and to Emezino, who is still in Northwest Nigeria trying to unbundle and dismantle gender biases and norms that are long entrenched and hampering women from accessing credit. Someone talked about usury. All of those things, EFINA is also, speaking to them. But I think that collaboration is the new norm. We're going to be doing that going forward. To our audience, we are sincerely grateful and so thankful for staying with us these 2 hours. I think it's been engaging. That's why you stayed. After this session, the webinar, which closes in 2 minutes from now, for those who could not answer your question, we will compile answers to all of those questions and we will share in a post-webinar brief that we will be sending out in the couple of days from now. Some of the questions have also been answered if you look at the Q&A window. So please, if the panelists did not answer your question, we have taken time to provide some answers via chats, so you will see them there. Ladies and gentlemen, without having to hold you back, what are the next steps? Look forward to our post-webinar engagement, and we want you to keep the line open. There are lots of intervention that EFINA is designing in partnership with different industry actors. Like Dr. Zaro said, we're also in that work groups within the Presidential Committee on Economic and Financial Inclusion to do a lot of work around addressing the gender gap and other financial indicators. Thank you so much, everyone. Please reach out to us. Do not fail to reach out to us. Visit our website. If you are looking for those who are looking for those to partner with, please, if you are looking for fintechs to partner with, go to the FintechNGR website. You will see a lot of fintechs who are playing a lot in this space. In the absence of that, if you think that that's us to do, also ensure that you can reach out to me or just send us an email through the same link you receive, the same email you receive, your message, notifying you of the webinar, and we will reply. Just before we go, this webinar has been put together by EFINA and FintechNGR. We have an economic and financial inclusion community of practice within FintechNGR. We'll also be sending you the link to join this community of practice so that we can have meaningful engagement going forward. We can also use that platform to redirect you to the people that, can speak to your area of need. Remember, in an economy that, includes all, everyone also benefits. So if we must all benefit, we all have to be inclusive. And that means you have to take this message beyond this webinar and tell those SMEs who are struggling to access credit some of the things we have discussed and how they can reach out to us. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for staying with us. And from all of us behind the cameras that have put this together, and on behalf of EFINA and FintechNGR and the panelists, we're saying thank you for staying put, and bye-bye for now.